Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. We're doing Loki episode 2, the variant.
Yes, sir.
That's fun.
This just, I love this episode. It just goes. It's so great. This series is just running at a pace.
Okay. Well, yeah. So this episode starts in 1985, Wisconsin, during a Renaissance fair.
Mhm.
At first, I was like, wow, they're really committing to going back in time. And then I was like, oh, good, 1985. I was like, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
Um,
I really like the Renaissance.
yeah, just a Renaissance fair. That comedian is Kate Berlant, who I find very funny. Just in other things, she's got like, yeah, she's just a funny person. You can look her up.
She's the one that goes like, some people need this.
Yeah.
That
Kate Berlant's very funny.
Such a great delivery of that line.
So basically, the variant captures Hunter C-20. Yes, there's a big action scene. They play "Waiting on a Hero." I think that's the name of the song.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, this song's getting a lot of play these days because it's also the like what they used for the Masters of the Universe with Kevin Smith.
Mhm.
So I was just like, oh, good to be this the people who have the royalties to that song.
Yeah, I'm just finding like the 80s soundtracking like vibe is really strong.
They used it in the Guardians trailer too, right? Like
heavily.
Like the video game, not the
yeah
movie.
yeah
Right,
they're
so there
using
you
it
go.
in the Guardians video game.
Three places where it's being used. Good for them.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's move on. The important part of that scene is that I feel like she is using enchantress powers, like the fact that she's got like the green glow on her hands. And I know people associate that with Wanda. But if we are talking about like Asgardians, Enchantress has a similar look to that.
Yes.
So I thought that was interesting that they went with that. And then it cuts because basically, yeah, she just took C-20, and Loki is not taking his training that seriously, or at least it seems that way. And he ends up just deciding to fight Miss Minutes.
That is a fun scene. That really makes you think. Like, and I know it's been addressed multiple times. It's like other places, but like, is she a real like thing, or is she a projection? The fact that she's an option on the elevator and even like the computer console is like hilarious to me.
Yeah, no, it's.
I can't wait to see what Miss Minutes actually keeps doing. You know, it's going to be funny.
I don't care about that at all. I just think it's just a funny thing that.
That's what I mean.
She's like, hey, don't hit me, leave me alone. Even if she's just a projection, I can see it being like, stop this.
Yep.
How dare you? But yeah, basically, it seems like he's got a base knowledge of what the TVA does. And he's kind of just like, yeah, I get the broad strokes, and he's not too worried about the details of it. He's just kind of like, yeah, I get the deal. I've checked out.
It's very Loki fashion, and I like the fact that we just skipped through that immediately. He's just like, okay, next episode, he's fully TVA, and he's doing his first field prep mission, and it's just the
I don't know if they wanted him to go. I know,
but the scene where he's wearing the jacket is hilarious. He's just like, how do I look? And he's like laughing. He's like, didn't realize he had variant printed on the back.
Wow, we've jumped.
That was really good. We jumped? Damn it.
Yeah, no, because he thinks he looks good. Yes, but the only reason I say we jumped is because I think it's way more of an emotional impact if you actually go through what happens to him, which is he's in the meeting with everyone as they're about to go to the Renaissance fair,
right?
And he keeps trying to insert himself and make himself feel like he's on the same level as them. And I think he brings up some things that is showing that they actually don't really know the details of things. until B15 is like, sorry, what does it say on the back of your jacket again? And that's the first time he notices. And I think it's less funny and more a bullying situation of like, just remember your place. Like,
It's definitely a bullying
look what it says
situation.
on your, look what it says on the back of your jacket. Like, you think you're part of us. You are other. You're a mistake. You aren't meant to be. So yeah, that's why I just wanted to like, let's not fuse all of that together. It was a really, I liked the moment, but it was a lot more impactful than just he's got a variant on his back.
Yeah,
it's what I'm liking about this show is that he's still, yes, last episode, and I think we talked about this, people were worried that we're like, oh well, now we just have nice Loki. It's like, no, we don't. We just have a Loki that actually understands who his adversary is now. He's like, oh, they do have power, so he can't treat it like, oh, I'm just smarter than them. He knows he isn't, but he needs to keep trying to put on airs, and they have some subtle, and some very unsubtle ways of pushing him back down. Like, look what it says on the back of your jacket.
Yep, fair enough.
But yeah, I really appreciated that scene because it was like, man, like, geez, I can't believe that they got him that way. But I do think it happens before they start going like, okay, so here's what the variants can look like, but here's what they always have in common. And he corrects them when he goes, no, it's not an illusion. What did he call it again? Oh, yeah, it's not illusion projection, it's duplication casting.
Yeah, I like the long-winded explanation, and they're like, moving on, and they're just like, what did they say? They're like, noted for future reference or something, right? Like that. Like they're not appreciating.
That's what I mean about that's what I mean about the subtle ways of being like, okay, sure, keep talking, but his point stands that like you don't actually know what you're going after. Like you don't know the details, and it's showing the audience, I feel, that they've never had to know that kind of stuff. Like they just capture the variants and do away with them, but like this variant has eluded them for so long because they're not paying attention to the details of what Loki can do. So again, I'm constantly enjoying the different ways that like he can push back and they will push back. And in this case, it's like maybe you are a bit it's kind of like what Bane says to Batman, like, kind of victory has weakened you and stuff, like because like they've won so much that they're like not seeing certain things. And I don't think the specific, as you said, it's a long-winded explanation, and I don't think that it's the specifics of the duplication casting versus illusion projection. It's more, it is a detail that you're missing. And so if you're missing that, you're probably missing a bunch of other details.
That's I know that's Loki's point. I love and they're still trying to like reinforce, but our system works because look, it's upheld time for the longest time, and you know, and Loki's point is constantly like, hey, but there's a reason why I'm a part of this. Like, it's obviously not working. Your people are getting killed, and you got to think differently. And they're still condescending to him, which is, I think, expected given who he is and the fact that he is a variant and all that kind of stuff. It's to be expected, but at the same time, it's just like, you get that feeling, you know, when you watch it, you're like, this is gonna bite you in the ass. Your bureaucracy is gonna bite you in the ass.
Exactly. And I that's something I wrote even that like it was the first time that I'm like, oh, like they are more powerful than him. They're still not all powerful. Like, they definitely would be able to handle him, and I think they make a point of saying like, you are the lesser of the variants. And even though he wants to keep saying he's the best one and everything, but like, so they're not worried about him, but they should be worried in general. So I think you're right that like it's showing kind of the like, what I don't know the proper term for it, but like
I think
you're starting to see the
belief.
holes in their you're starting to see the holes in their system.
I think it's, to me, one of the downfalls of dogma is the idea of like, we've done it this way, it's always been successful according to our stats that we keep, and therefore we should just keep doing this, right? And then Loki's point is, but and to a very, very big degree, it's like a micro scale of what the three timekeepers are basically doing. It's like, well, here's the main thing: we can't have varying multiverses anymore because they'll clash and compete as so the propaganda says, it's like a micro level of it. It's like a smaller version. And Loki's making sure it's like, well, this is why it's not working in your favor right now. And it's just not, they're not seeing it. They just see one thing's unilaterally. That's it.
Right. So then I guess the next thing is I feel like this is where he's kind of like, why would you, like, why are you okay with me being here? He's like, you're not going to like, he's like, are you afraid I'm going to run away? And he's like, no, like how, like one, we can catch you, but also if you ran away, how is that going to get you closer to the timekeepers? Which then, I mean, I think we all would have known this already, but it's confirmed. Like that's Loki's end game, is being able to talk to the timekeepers.
Right.
So he's like, oh, an audience with the timekeepers is on the table. And he's like, yeah, keep that focus. And then that's when they jump into the time, like the Renaissance Fair. And I think another bit of good exposition is when they're in Wisconsin, Loki's like, why don't we just go to before? And again, I'm not too worried about the details of what Mobius says, but it makes sense. Basically, the general idea is we can't just go before. It needs to have already happened, because then things start branching out, and that's where we we can see all the variants and all this stuff like that. So they're always playing catch up in that sense, but it won't ultimately matter because they set the charge and everything goes away.
See, I really appreciate it from that perspective. Loki is asking the question that, in my mind, I'm asking is like, well, why aren't you just showing up beforehand to prevent crime from happening? If the timekeepers are all knowing and know that this is going to happen or something like that, it's like a contradiction of itself, where it's like the timekeepers are all knowing, all wise, and all this kind of stuff, and prune off the timelines and all this. But it's like, well, if you're all knowing, then you can't possibly know what this event, this deviation is going to do. It's less like, this is the timeline that we want. And it's so frustrating because like everyone at the TVA is failing to see that.
Well, no, I don't think that's,
well, that's not everyone. Not everyone.
Their whole job is to keep the one timeline. So I don't know if it's frustrating. That's just that's literally what they were made to do, was keep the one timeline.
I know, but for me to watch, because it's just like, no, for how, in regards to how that thinking is just preventing Loki from actually being able to consult properly. But I mean, he's getting through Owen Wilson's character. Either. That's true. He's slamming.
No one is doing this in good faith, other than the people who are just drones being like, oh, I'm just like, Mobius isn't doing it in good faith. He's got some other stuff he wants to do.
He's got a slime.
Yeah. And then other people are either just doing it because like, yeah, this is my job. So yeah, I don't know about that, because it's kind of like
fair.
No one's engaging in this being like, well, is there a better way? Because either you're like, well, this is what I'm told to do, and if you do believe that like things have to play out a certain way, why would you ever be like, oh, maybe there's a different way we could do this? Yeah. And then there's the people that are like, I just need you to do this so we can catch this variant.
Yep. Fair.
So yeah, for me, not that frustrating. I'm just like, yeah, this is playing out how it needs to. But what it is showing again is more the gaps in their logic, and the gaps in, are these people doing the right thing? Like you're starting to see that, well, if you are so committed to this, then you aren't really concerned. And I think they speak to this later, so we'll get to it. But it is kind of just like, yeah, like you don't really care about good or bad. You just are like, no, it's just what needs to happen.
It's just your job.
Yeah.
I was that was really, really well explained in like one of the moments with one of the agents, and like just one of the people in like Pompeii or whatever it was, wherever they start going to the apocalypse. And I can't wait to get to that scene, but it's a really, really well explained thing.
So then basically they get into that tent again, and Loki is, I think he says, I was stalling for time for the variant, but I read it as he's like, oh, I actually can control this situation now. I'm just going to hold their attention so for as long as I can, because at first I was like, why is he helping? Like he's helping, and then when Mobius is like, oh, he's lying, I was like, good for you, Loki. Like you wasted their time for like just right amount of time, I feel like. And it was he had power over over them in that moment. It's like kind of like getting back at them for the variant jacket.
See, I like Loki in the sense where I can appreciate the fact is like, okay, well, he's so power hungry. It's like, okay, well, the only power I have is to waste your time,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is inconsequential for the time variance authority. And it's like, I'm still going to do it. It's just a funny thing to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's his way of being like, how much control can I actually have of you and testing my limits and playing that angle of it. And it is really, really well done because you're just like, you're either sliming, being a jerk, or testing the waters, or all three. And
Yeah.
that scene was so much fun to watch because in the
'Cause even
setting of
I
a
was like, I don't
Renaissance fair.
understand this metaphor he's doing. And like, I understand it, but why is he taking so long with it? And then I'm like, oh, he was wasting their time. Like the
Oh,
whole,
you
you have
mean
to have sharp
the
ear, like sharp teeth,
yeah.
even sharper ears. And I'm just like, okay, you said it. Why are you still talking? Like, what's going on here? And then Mobius figures out, he's like, my ears are sharp too. I'm like, I like, again, he pushes, they push back. Like
Mhm.
I enjoyed that from this episode,
I
and
do enjoy
how I
that.
feel like it will keep going
Mhm.
throughout the show
Yep.
is that he's not facing a Hulk or a Thor who can beat him up. It's like, oh, like this is actually a challenge to him.
It's a mind game.
Yeah. But
It's
like
all mind
he's
games. It's
trying to
great.
play mind games on people that aren't invested the way he is. So
Mhm.
it's like it is a challenge overall.
Oh, totally.
So I like that. And then basically they cut to they set the charge just in time to prune that timeline.
Mhm.
This time I remember Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character's name. She's Renslayer, and
Yes.
she kind of reveals that she's got another analyst agent
Mhm.
on the go. I feel like there's a lot of speculation to it. I don't have any, but like I'm sure we can if we get to the end of this talk about that. But like I
Mm.
think the important thing there is that like you're seeing that Mobius and Renslayer are close, and especially
Mhm.
when she starts talking about the Loki variant. Sorry, I'll just call Loki for this. When she talks about Loki,
Right.
and she's like, he's stubborn, this and this. Reminds me of somebody, clearly meaning she reminds me of you, Mobius. And he's like,
Mhm.
funny because I was thinking it reminds me of someone, aka being like, he's like you, Renslayer. And
Mhm.
so like they know each other on that level. But obviously she still keeps things from him.
Yes.
And he feels at a lot like that is kind of where he sees the like lack of power because he's like, wait, how come you get to keep my stuff from my cases? I don't get
Mhm.
to keep it. Also, what's that? I don't remember ever doing that. And she's so it's that was more interesting to me in that scene of
Yeah.
like for someone who constantly comes off like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
There it stops at Renslayer.
Yeah. It's a fun scene to me. It's like because it's very much the idea of like, yeah, you can do what you want, you can play as you want, but I'm the boss and I get to keep your trinkets because I'm the boss. Kind of, it's just that exertion of power over him is really, really fun. Even though like, and she's like, well, I've got my people because like everyone's just. It's a slime off right now. This is the kind of slime off I actually really, really enjoy, as opposed to like um the really, really, really drawn out ones where it's like, oh, it's just slime, but this is slime and action, and it's great.
Because yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
he's talking about like, so like how are the timekeepers or whatever, and she's like,
Mhm.
oh, they're really involved in this one, right? And he's
Mhm.
just like, oh, okay, because she's so concerned with he won't be able to change, he shouldn't be able to change because this is the whole point of him is to
Mhm.
be the villain.
Yes.
So they're at odds there, more overtly at odds, even though you know there's still something else that's kind of bubbling in the background. But the thing they're overtly at odds with is, can Loki change? And then ultimately, Mobius is like, whatever, man. Like if he doesn't change, I'll just kill him. I don't care. Like it's no real problem for me.
Yep.
He's like, he's so arrogant, I'll be able to do it.
Yep.
But he is pointing out all the ways that he's helping in the sense of like, look, this guy likes to be heard, he likes to stall for time. Stands to reason the variant we're looking for will do the same thing, and that's
Yep.
how we'll be able to catch them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically that's the information I got from this. They don't really,
Yep.
Renslayer, both of them don't trust each other.
They don't.
It seems Mobius is way more overt about how much he doesn't trust Renslayer. and Renslayer kind of just lies. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the Timekeepers are specifically involved in this one, but it just seems like I think she's just talking shit.
Yeah. So I don't know if she's talking shit about the Timekeeper thing. That kind of seemed pretty well delivered. I think she was talking shit about the other agent, though. I think the other agent that she has.
I'm the exact opposite of you.
Really? You think she's bullshitting about the Timekeepers? But okay, because I think Hunter B-15, Wunmi Mosaku is like her inside person, her other agent.
But that's still a different agent that she talks to. So
I get
don't
that,
know how that's bullshit.
I mean, she's not bullshitting on that. Like, how do I say this? Yeah, I don't think she's bullshitting either way. In those, I think those are legitimate threats. Yeah, that's what I think. But I think the inside person is like I was just thinking Hunter B-15. I wasn't thinking anyone like, ooh, is it this person from the comics or anything like that? I think it's like someone we've already met.
Chances are it's someone we've met.
Yeah.
But I still think the point isn't who is it. It's more he isn't her only person. And they were operating under that farce for however long, and now she's finally been like, "No, you're not. You're not the only person." So, do you think
he's legitimately threatened by that, or
I don't think he's like?
I think
it's
no. But do you think he's threatened by it?
I don't.
Or
does he know if it matters? I think the whole point is he has, because of the conversation he has later, he has bought into what all of this is. He might want to do certain things outside of it, but he still vocally buys into the whole things will work out the way they need to work out. So I don't know if it would matter to him that she has another agent. I think it only matters to him in so much as, oh, I thought you wouldn't lie to me. So I think that like if he knows that, oh, she has someone else, I think that also calls into question how involved the Timekeepers are or what their level of involvement ever is.
Fair. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think it's clear that there's someone else, because he's like, wait, I don't remember bringing in this pen. And then he's like, it must be that other analyst you have on the side. And she kind of tries to sweep that under the rug and keep it moving.
Right.
Because he's able to, like, it starts with the snow globe and he goes, oh, I don't remember bringing one of those back. I love those things. I would have remembered that. And then it ends on the pen. So the point isn't really who it is or what it's more just, she doesn't tell him everything. He doesn't know everything about her. She has her secrets.
Right. Now, you know what I find funny about that scene is that aside from the fact that she keeps all the trinkets, is the fact that he's not allowed to keep any trinkets versus who's the other guy that keeps Infinity Stones and like says a bunch of these guys keep the Infinity Stones around here.
But they mean nothing to them. Whereas those trinkets mean something.
I know. What I find funny is the fact that she just actively will not let him keep any, versus everyone else gets to do whatever they want. Like I just find it funny. Like that's another aspect of her.
I guess I see it different because it's like the difference between like, hey, how come your boss lets you have paper clips versus, oh, like that. Like, let's say you guys are in realty and it's like, hey, this is the first brick that we laid or something like that. Like, I see a very big difference between something that they see as everyday ordinary versus something that means something. Even if it doesn't have actual value, it means something to that organization.
Fair. I see what you're saying. Yeah, they're just confiscating crap. Yep.
Yeah, the whole point is they don't care about Infinity Stones. They mean nothing in that universe. And like that's the visual that we need to see. Like, wow, okay, so this is something new. Like we can forget about the Infinity Stones for this time going forward. If she was keeping those, it would confuse the issue.
Right.
But yeah, I think what we're both saying is it's still funny that she likes to exert her power in the way of like, oh, but I get to keep the like,
it's very petty. It's very petty the way she's doing it, and it's getting to him. And it's funny because it's feeding off each other. You know, I just don't think it's one of those things like you can't see either one of them stopping that pettiness between each one. But if they did, you'd wonder if the relationship were to get better.
Maybe.
I don't want them to stop because I think it's great. It's like, no, I'm not letting you keep any of these, and I do have someone on the side. It's petty. It's great,
Yeah,
and I'm here for it.
it's definitely. I think we're seeing everyone at different points in this episode.
Yeah.
Be petty about what power they have or what power they can have over
Mhm.
any given scene partner.
Mhm.
So I think I already said this, but the next scene is Loki being like, "Why are you sticking up for me?" And basically, that was the scene that made me be like, "Yeah, it's not that we have a nice Loki now. It's also not that like Mobius, or at least I don't think, trusts him. I think
Mhm.
he's just like, oh, you will be motivated to catch this variant. He says, like, it's gonna be your ego that helps us, not like your kindness or anything like that. It's just if
Mhm.
you know there's someone better at doing what you think you do best, you're gonna want to meet them at the very least, and so you'll lead us to that variant,
Mhm.
which he does. So it's like, and it's also what I said earlier about like all the like mind tricks, like when Loki's like, "Oh yeah, like congratulations, this is what it's like to be with a Loki. Like expect," and it doesn't matter to him because he's not invested in Loki as a person. He's just like, "You are a means to an end. Like
Yeah.
I am around you because I know you will lead us to this variant.
Mhm.
It's not because you're good. It's not any of those. It's just like because you have an ego. You're
Yeah.
arrogant, and this will. So I just thought that was a nice way of distilling it. That conversation they have,
Mhm.
where it was like, oh no, like if you're wondering why I'm helping you, it's one of these two options. Pick one. It does not matter to me. You can
I
believe
really
whatever you
like
want.
that.
Yeah,
I really like that. The whole like believe whatever you want. There's one of two.
yeah.
It was a great
And
way of
I
calling
don't
him on
even
his
think it's
bullshit.
one of those. It's just like it doesn't matter to me. Like whatever
Yep.
you need to believe to think that you still need to be engaged in
Yep.
trying to outsmart me, trying to do all these things, like overthrow us by talking to the time
Yep.
keepers. Go
I
ahead.
think, yeah, I think the greatest part about Owen Wilson's character in all of this is the fact that he's just like, well, you can't bullshit a bullshitter because I'm calling you on every single thing that I would do in your situation, and he does it accurately, and it's just pissing him Loki off, and I think it's great. It's so
Well,
much
yeah,
fun.
we'll see. I think you might be right that he might be a bullshitter,
Yeah.
but I also don't know that anything we've seen so far makes me think he's a bullshitter. I think he just, again, he has,
Mhm.
for me, bought into what they do. So
Yes. Oh,
it's
he's buying into it for sure.
so for me, it's not that he's like bullshitting
Mhm.
anyone. He's just like, I have
Well,
confidence that I will get this done because
right.
that's how it's supposed to happen.
Right. But he is bullshitting Loki in some regards to get him to do what he wants, and that's what I enjoy about him. He's like, well, I'm gonna bullshit the people I can bullshit, and it's hilarious. But he's like the people higher up above him, or the people actually have control of him in this situation, he will diffuse very very quickly. Like, no, hey, you're in control here. This is not my territory. It's hilarious. Like, I think he's great in that regard. But he is bullshitting Loki for sure. And I think that needs
Again,
to
I don't
be.
know if he is. I feel like he's just like, it
Really?
doesn't, yeah, just like, it's what I said. He's like, you're here because I need you to find someone. That is the
Yeah.
beginning and end of it. And whatever you need to believe to keep that going, go ahead. But it's not like he's telling him anything he
Right.
wants to hear.
Right.
He's just like,
That's fair.
he's just like, you're here and this is what we're using you for.
Yes, that's true. His brutal honesty is.
Like
I
think
I'm reading
you're
too
right
much
that
into
he will.
his. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it will end up because I think we're both on the same path that like
Mhm.
he's ultimately not going to be associated with the TVA,
Yeah.
meaning he will have to bullshit people at some point. But
Right.
I genuinely believe that he's just like not engaged, like he's not emotionally invested in that. Like he is so far removed from that that he's just like, okay, if that's what you like, the whole like, oh, it makes you seem smart, and then he's like, I am smart. He's like, okay, that it doesn't matter. You could be smart, you could be dumb. All I know about you is that you're going to lead us to this variant, and
Fair.
that's that.
Yep.
So for me, it doesn't feel like he's bullshitting yet to Loki. I
Right.
think he's bullshitting other people. Like I feel like he's been doing way more bullshitting with Renslayer. Like in the first episode, he's like, "Oh, I'm always looking up to you. Feels right." Like that's bullshit,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he is full on bullshitting yet with Loki. I could be wrong.
Fair enough.
I think we will get there at some point.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like there's long term, we look back at some of these episodes and like, oh yeah, that line of dialogue, that was bullshit. Like it's just fun because everything about this character, I'm like, I can smell the bullshit, but you don't know it's there yet, or it's not.
There's nothing confirming it, but as I said, I understand where you're going with it. And I think we're both on the same page. That like,
it's sus. Yeah. It's definitely sus.
So then basically he keeps Loki. This is where they had that conversation about the timekeepers. I was wrong. It wasn't before they went to Wisconsin. It was this. He's like, yeah, keep that focus. We're gonna. Oh no, maybe he did. And this was the pun. He's like, well, how are you gonna punish me? And he's like, just do more work, research. And he's not allowed to learn anything other than about himself. So he learns all of Loki. I love the emotional moment when he's like, oh, Ragnarok was destroyed. Because like last episode, it was like, oh, the people he loves are gone, but to know that like the whole thing,
like your entire civilization,
like which is what he was kind of tying his worth to, which was like, and then I'll rule Asgard at some point. So even on that level, I can see him being a bit upset, but I think we both know it's also because he cared. Like,
there's multiple levels to this. I find when he found out,
it was well played.
It was very well played because it on some levels, like Asgard needed to exist to give him clout. You know, if it didn't exist, it's like, oh, you're just Loki. Like you didn't terrorize anyone. You weren't of anyone's. Like your whole civilization's gone. It's you're nothing now. Versus like, and he obviously cared about it. He wanted to rule for a reason. He enjoyed ruling when he did get to rule for, let's say, 3 months. When he, you know what I mean? Like he enjoyed it and he loved that side of things. And it like he was starting to build that relationship. Well, he was seeing that relationship with Thor unfold in front of him on the TVA screens, and you're just like, wait, is this what my future is? And then it's like it's all gone, and it all meant nothing, and he's seeing it unfold. It's brutal. It's devastating to find that out.
But basically, learning about Ragnarok led him to be like, oh, that's how this variant is doing it. Like I really like that. I really like these, like, oh, like, so if everything's destroyed, this variant could just keep going back there before. And I think that's why that conversation earlier makes sense when he asked, like, well, why don't you just go before? And he's like, well, because the thing needs to happen and then it branches out. And he's like, oh, but they can just go back and to an event where the timelines won't branch out, so it won't be something that the TVA can track down. Like if the variant keeps going back to Pompeii or whatever, or Ragnarok, and I know the next scene is him doing that, and I really like that scene is him rushing to he reads it, he rushes to Mobius in the like diner or not diner but the cafeteria, and then ruins his salad, and he's like, and it won't matter. And I this isn't my thought, but I agree with it wholly. Like it is great writing, but it's also like great like sight gags and physical comedy. Like all it's like three things working at once in like this great scene of like, because just to see him going like, see, I can do whatever I want, it doesn't matter, and like just watching Mobius be like, please don't, just leave my salad. I wanted to eat that. That's my lunch. And like taking Casey's like Boku drink and being like, see, look, this is. He's like, so that's Ragnarok. He's like, yep, this is Ragnarok. And that's he's pushing Hulk off the bridge. He's like, yep, this is Hulk off the bridge. This is me burning the castle, and like all of that is really well done. But I also just like that concept of like that's how this variant has eluded the TVA for so long, that it's a detail they just never thought about.
And it's
right. I just like that it's like it's all connected. Like you think like, oh, why that was some nice exposition about why they do it, but then later it comes in, it's like, oh, like you guys think like that, so then the variant can do this.
It's clear, like here's my outside the box thinking. It's the way I love this. This is what I love about Loki. This is where like the mischief part about Loki is fun to me. I'm like, okay, you ruined the salad, and the way he did it was funny, and it's just like, yeah, you made your point and you kept ruining the salad and it kept getting to Owen Wilson. Perfect mischief there. I'm like, this is so much fun. I'm like, the salad scene was perfect. It was so good.
I really like that. So then, obviously, he's like, "Well, we're not going to Ragnarok, so you could just run off
Mhm.
with your people." And he's like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's not about going home. Just like he's
It
like, you
doesn't
don't have to
matter.
trust me. Just trust that I want to be right."
Yeah.
Again,
I
tying
love that
into
logic. Yeah.
tying into what we already know about Mobius, which is that is what he trusts
Yeah.
that Loki will want to get this accomplished.
Yeah. And using his own logic against him.
Mhm.
And that was so smart. It's
Well,
like, okay, yeah, let's get
they're
us.
using each other. Like it's like
Yeah.
this cyclical thing because
Mhm.
he can use that logic only because Owen will or Mobius can be like,
Mhm.
I mean, this is what I want. Like this is like he's doing the work for me. Thank you. Like,
Yep.
great. And they tested in Pompeii. It's very funny. He speaks Latin to them. He lets the goats go, creates all sorts of chaos.
Mhm.
And I really like when he's like, "We're from the future, right?" It feels like we're from the future, right? Like I can
Yeah.
tell them I know this because we're from the future. And then
I like how
like
Owen Wilson's like very, very conservative. It's like, okay, let's be gentle. Let's not do too much to deviate the time stream. And Loki's like, hey, wait, we're trying to make a point here. And it's like, if
Yeah.
we're gonna do something, let's actually do something. And Owen Wilson's like, I don't know, like what did he say? Like sneeze over there or something
no, he
like
said
that?
do a bird sound. But I
Like a
think
bird sound, yeah.
more important than that, and it comes up later. So
Yeah.
I was gonna really dig into it, but this is the first scene where you see him. He still respects these people because Loki's
Yeah.
like, they're just gonna die. He's like, and he doesn't say anything there, but it is like he does respect certain things. Like
Yeah.
like he's not like down to just fuck with these people's lives
Mhm.
just because he knows they're gonna die. He's like, come on, like
Yeah.
don't be like disrespectful of
He
these
still
people. Like
cares
yeah,
on
like
some level.
he's not
Yeah.
so far removed that life means nothing to him. He's just
Yes.
like, come on, like so I liked that little detail as well. But
Mhm.
ultimately, yeah, he's like, you're doing all this bullshit and there's no variance energy. Like they will die and this will not affect anything. So
Yep.
Loki is proved right. Like he's like,
Yep.
okay, this is it. And then the second thing is, so they know that's where the variant can hide. They just need to know where, and he remembers the kablooey gum. And he's like, oh, that was only sold between 2048 and 2050. I could have sworn that gum was from like the 1950s, but
Yeah.
it's cool that they said it in the future. I mean, he's like, so it's like, we've got 2 years. We just need to know when it was sold, like
Mhm.
during a disaster. And that's how they narrow it down. Again, I feel like it all makes sense. It's very easy to track. I like the writing, and I do think yeah, like I really appreciated that writing because it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like you're
It
sitting
is a
there being
grim.
like, yeah.
Sorry, it's grim though. Like the future writing is like, oh yeah, that is a very, very predictable where we're going in the next like 30 years. That's
Yeah.
the only thing I have to add to that. It is great writing. It's like, yeah, everything about this logically tracks and moves it forward beautifully.
Yeah, you don't have to be like, wait, how are they it's like that seems like that was a bit too easy for them. Like, no, like they only have 2 years and they have like they know that it's based around it's gonna have to be based around a disaster. I
Retail.
can't remember if it was
Yeah.
remember if it was a hurricane or not, but it was a disaster, and it
Yeah.
needs to be somewhere that has the kablooey gum.
Yes.
And which puts them in Alabama in 2050.
Mhm.
I shouldn't have closed that.
In the rock smart.
But before they go there,
Boom.
that's why I shouldn't have closed
Yep.
that. Is
Yep.
this is where I think what you were talking about is this is Mobius talking about their belief systems and why
Yes.
there's no need for him to like think he's superior because he doesn't like there's no need for Loki to think he's superior because he doesn't believe what Mobius believes.
Right.
So I think this might be what we've been getting at, that maybe Mobius doesn't believe anyway, but it is more like the one thing he believes is why get caught up in those details.
That's
It's
true.
like, I think he believes that things are a work in progress. He's like, look, as someone who was created by the timekeepers to protect what came before, cool. I get that in broad strokes. And they're gonna figure out how, like, they're untangling the wires and they figure out what it is to be the what the ending is. Cool. I don't need to look into it any further. I can operate within those parameters.
Right. And yeah, I get his motivation and that discussion about his character and what motivates him, and I really, really genuinely like that, and how like is it here that it happens where he's talking about the jet ski?
Yeah.
It is such a great moment for him to talk about a jet ski in that way. It's like there was just like a lot of bullshit through history, and for him to like just like there was one moment in time though, the jet ski was the pinnacle of everything. I'm like, that makes me sad knowing that I have never been on a jet ski myself. I'm like, am I truly missing out on the pinnacle of everything according to Mobius
Could
to
be.
be
Who knows?
explored
I
at
mean, you still
some
have
future
time.
date?
You still
Oh, I
have,
still do. Hopefully. But yeah, it's just a great moment because I love that real human moment of Mobius.
And then it leads us to Loki saying the thing that I feel like we're all pointing at, which is he's like, you called me a little kid, but I know things kids don't know, which is no one bad is truly bad and no one good is truly good.
Yep.
So to me, that made it seem like what you're saying is like, if you're pretending to be bad or if you're projecting bad, you probably aren't all bad. Like,
yep.
And if you're projecting good, there's probably something to that as well, which again, I think we discussed it in the first episode, but like that's what the TVA is trying to project is this is good. Like that's what we're projecting. And Loki even admits, yeah, I projected bad because of this. Like, it's what I had.
Deep-rooted insecurities and everything like that. And he's right there. It's the yin to yangs and everything like that. There's always a bit of the dark side in everyone. There's got to be balance, and that's what all he's pointing out. And I think it's great, but I think
it's him being like, "I'm on to you, Mobius."
Yeah, it's definitely him being, "I'm on to you." But do you feel like he's also saying to a degree where it's like the greater the kind of projection of good, the greater the evil actually is, kind of thing, versus being
I think he's
just
saying there's a reason that someone would project either one of those things.
Fair enough.
Like you could, I don't like. He didn't get into it, but I don't take that statement to mean that if you think someone's good, beware, they're probably bad. I think it's more if someone is projecting, like if it's trying to convince you I'm good, there's probably a reason for that they're trying to convince you you're good. And if someone's trying to convince you they're bad, it's probably like you shouldn't just take it as, oh, then they must be bad. Like
right.
It's again, I sound like a broken record, but like it's everything that this episode has been about, right? Like that, yeah, you can take it in broad strokes of like that's the good guy, that's the bad guy, but it is those details that will help you actually get to the root of things.
Yep.
And you guys are missing the details.
Yeah.
You guys keep missing those details.
Yeah, they're missing the gray zone stuff. They're just very black and white thinking, very totalitarian.
But yeah, so basically they go to the Alabama Rocks cart. And I thought it was funny that again B-15 decides to exert her power by being like, nope, Loki's coming with me, can't go with you.
Yep,
this is my mission.
Yep.
And I just want to say I'm seeing far too many like commenters and reactors being like, fuck her, and I'm like, all right, settle down. Like, because the optics of that is you're mad at a black woman for trying to take charge. But because realistically, and B-15 is someone I think is actually fully in on this, and not, I don't mean she's doing something nefarious. I think she believes everything. And yeah, so if you believe that, and also Loki, like as Mobius has said, I've watched your life. Like I know that you betray people all the time. That's like the one thing you know about this Loki. Then, yeah, why not? She should keep an eye on him. She shouldn't be like, oh, you can just go off and do whatever you want.
She's operating based on evidence.
Yeah,
like, and I'm like, everyone that's like trying to say anything negative about her, I'm like, no, man. I mean, like, if you'd be on the other side of it, being, why is she so incompetent? If like she did, like, oh, okay, here you go. Like, no, she's doing her job and she's doing it well.
Yeah, like I know that it's interrupting the power fantasy that because if you are attaching yourself to Loki, but
yes,
if we're looking at well-written characters, I think that makes sense. That
very well written
would be like,
yeah,
no, why? Like, one, no, you can't have a weapon, and two, like, no, I'm not letting you just split off and do what you want in this. Like, especially because she knows, like, you, even when I'm in the room, you try to fuck things up, so I'm not gonna let you not be in the same room as me. Like, forget what I knew about you. I've already witnessed firsthand that you will try to screw us over.
I think everything her character does is so well done. And so there's this one detail where Mobius even gives him his daggers back for a brief moment.
Yeah, and she
and
takes
she
it
walks
off.
by perfectly timed in that cut of just like takes it away immediately. It's not happening. No discussion. She does everything properly. She's doing her job. I don't think anyone should be looking at that in any other way other than she's a very competent character. Just
Yes,
great.
yeah. That was the right decision for her character to make.
Yeah.
So basically, they see someone who's being controlled by the variant, and then
Yep.
that energy leaps into B15.
Mhm.
And I really like this because I saw an interview where Wunmi said when she was in acting school,
Mhm.
Tom Hiddleston was in fourth year, so they had like the same thing, and it was just interesting watching them play, like her play her version of Tom Hiddleston. I'm like, that must have been a nice moment on set.
Yeah.
Like, but I really liked anytime someone was playing Loki,
Yep.
and like it looked like instead of handshaking, they did the smile. Like she would
Yeah.
smile and then he would smile. Like I appreciated that, and I thought, yeah, I thought Mumi did a great job portraying her version of a Loki in B15's body.
Mhm. That was one of the things of that scene I really enjoyed is watching each one of those actors take on the Loki character and doing a very good job of it. Like I just wonder how many takes, how much dedication. They're unsung heroes in that scene for sure.
Mhm.
Because that was great.
And
Those smiles, you're right to point that
yeah.
out. That devious smile was a perfect kind of like, hey,
It's like
I know
that's
what's
their
up.
handshake. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, oh, me, I presume, and I like that right
Mm.
away. The variant shoots back with, if anything, you're me. Like,
Yeah.
like I am the better thing. Also, she doesn't want to be called Loki.
Mhm.
Is important. I feel
It's
like
very important. And the
uh,
credits will tell us
well, yeah, we'll
something
get to
different
that. But
too, and
yeah,
we're getting to that for
but
sure.
yeah,
But it's very,
I like
very
that
important
verbal
detail.
showdown. That it's like the
Yes.
variant thinks they're superior. They also are like, don't call me Loki, and
Yep.
that it's cowardly to be working with the TVA.
Hmm.
But that is the assessment the variant has, is that, oh, you're working for the TVA, you're cowardly, and he's like, oh no, I'm not. I'm working for myself. I'm gonna overthrow the timekeepers, and she's kind of like,
Sure you are, bud.
I don't care about
Yeah.
that. Like this again, it's Loki interacting with someone who's like, I don't care about you. Like you could say whatever you want. I've got my own thing going on here. You're not going to be able to like stall for time or do anything. Everything you learned will be on my time, because ultimately you realize, oh, the variant was stalling for time so that everything could get set off.
Yep.
But yeah,
because it's a great scene watching that whole thing unfold from like the security camera where it's like the 20-minute countdown's going off and you're like, oh shit, what's happening in 20 minutes? And you during that whole verbal interaction, well, at least for me, I forgot about that and I watched the episode twice. And I'm like, it was such a great thing where everything went off.
Yeah, and so it is important because he said, oh no, like I'm gonna rule the TVA, and you can be my lieutenant, and she's like, yeah,
why
I
would
don't care
that?
about that. I don't need to rule the TVA. I'm out on that. And then this is, I put all that together. This is intercut with stuff with Mobius, but I just talked about all of that conversation as one piece. So then so yeah, chronologically this happens before what we just talked about, but Mobius this is where you see for sure that like he is different than the other TVA members, because they're like pushing these people around.
Yeah.
And like the one guy, it's like, hey, do you guys have a helicopter? Are you from FEMA? He's like, yeah, either one. And like disrespecting these people that are going to die. And Mobius pushes back again. He's like, come on, man, like don't treat them better than that. Like I like that. I like that he's still
he's got compassion
enough. Yeah, it's the compassion that he has setting him apart from the TVA again.
Yeah, because it's very, very much like you can see it in that whole authoritative, like pushing people around. And he's like, well, they're scared. They should be. They're about to die. And then he's like, well,
or
not
even that he was like, yeah, we're
be
FEMA
of us. Yeah.
Even the fact that he's like, yeah, we're FEMA. Believe whatever you want. Like it's like,
yeah,
well, you don't have to tell them that.
Don't be so dismissive. Don't be treat them like humans. It's like, yeah, they shouldn't be afraid of us though. Is the point? And I'm like, great. He understands it. He's like, there's nothing I can do to change these people, but they shouldn't have to die with extra fear. And yeah, it's a great touch to his character for sure.
so then they again, this doesn't happen in this order, but I tried to group everything together. They find
Yeah.
C20,
Mhm.
and she seems shook. At first, I thought that she was like, "Oh, I don't want to go home," and they were like, "Oh, we'll just take you to the TVA." She's like, "No, home," but she doesn't say that. All she says is, "We can't go back there because I let her know where the timekeepers are." I shouldn't say
Yeah.
her. The variant. I let the variant know
Yeah.
where the timekeepers are. So
Right.
it was more like, let's not go to where the bad stuff is about to happen.
Yeah. I gotta be honest. In that scene, I don't believe her. You know what I mean? I don't believe that she knows where the timekeepers are, given that it doesn't seem like Owen Wilson's character knows where the timekeepers are.
He's never met them. I don't know if he doesn't know where they are.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair detail. But do you think it's like everyone knows exactly
I
where
don't
the
know that
timekeepers
it
are
makes
at all
sense
times?
to have that complication that she lied
Mm.
about that. Like, why? What does that gain if she's lying about that?
Uh, That's fair, but I just looked at that and like, would you actually know where the timekeepers are? It seems like a detail that you wouldn't know. That's all I didn't want to pursue that any further. It just raised an
regardless
eyebrow
of
to me.
whether or not she knows where they
Yeah,
are, she thinks she knows where they are.
that's true.
So it's
And
irrelevant.
she did give up. Yeah, she did give up that. She did give up that info. So fair enough.
So if she thinks she knows where they are and she says that, no one in that scene, if they know that she doesn't know, would be like, no, that's not true. It's just like, oh, okay, like something big is about to happen.
Yeah,
But I don't think she's lying.
fair.
She might be wrong, but
Right.
I don't think she's lying. I wouldn't get that story beat.
Yeah, fair.
It wouldn't
Okay.
make any sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then that's when we basically see the variant keeps using different bodies and he's fighting. The variant uses this bigger body to fight Loki. And a detail I thought was very interesting is when he gets on the ground, at one point he goes, "I wouldn't treat me like this," which I still think is like pushing towards maybe it isn't Lady Loki, like, or a Loki, like, because like I think he's like, why would I abuse myself like this? Like, I think he's catching on to what other people are putting, and I feel like this one isn't just me speculating. I think ultimately the way the way that actor looks at the end, they're trying to evoke Lady Loki, but it does seem like they've given you clues that it might be Enchantress. And I know you have the other thing about the character, the way the character is listed for the Spanish subtitles. I think it's like or something like that. Not the subtitles, but the Spanish credits at the end.
Yes.
But I think this helps boost that idea that it's not a Loki variant because of that line of like, I wouldn't treat me like this. Like this is odd.
Yeah, there's been a lot of evidence gathered to suggest that she's not actually a Loki, but using the disguise of a Loki variant to elude the TVA and all that kind of stuff to throw them off. Like, and there's a good evidence because I get the sense where there's something off about it. I'm like, it's not straight up Loki. Yeah, and totally.
I know that is directly from the comics. That is a shot directly from the comics. But I don't know. Honestly, if they're like it's just Lady Loki or the MCU version of it, I'll like, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. Like we've seen that looking at the Disney Plus details doesn't really give you the answers you need.
But it's
so they could
either
just be
way
merging Enchantress powers with Lady Loki. But I thought that was interesting that he was like, what? And it could just be a funny line. Like I'm not saying this is proof and they're wrong if they go against what I'm saying. Like I'm just saying I'm aware that could have just been a funny line to like lighten the mood. But I think if we are going to the whole things aren't as they seem and this isn't actually the variant is like, don't call me Loki. There's a bunch of things going on. This is all leading to maybe that's not a variant of Loki.
Yeah. I think it's important to talk about abilities and powers because in this scene we see
let's
Loki
get to the end of the episode and then because I think that will be a nice conversation to have as we've kind of got to the end. So basically the variant reveals themselves. We don't have a name. We know that she doesn't want to be called Loki, but she's basically like, this isn't about you, so get out of my way. And then,
Mhm.
but leaves the door open long enough for Loki to join her.
Mhm.
So maybe it is more about him than she's letting on. Uh, but yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's important that they've split up Loki from Mobius, and it makes him look bad again that Loki would join the variant. So we'll
Mhm.
see where that puts him in the third episode. And
Mhm.
the fact that she's bombing the sacred timeline. I don't quite
Yes.
understand what that means, but that's what they say in the actual episode. Oh, she's bombing the sacred timeline. And I'm
Right.
hoping there's more explanation, but obviously it's going to cause a bunch of we visually see it's causing a bunch of alternate timelines that they don't
Mhm.
want. So for me, I can just be like, oh, she just started a bunch of timelines. I don't need to know the
Mhm.
specifics of how she did it. It's just like, yeah, she took all their equipment, she
Mhm.
waited for the right time. So obviously she wanted to be found and
Mhm.
then bombed. I guess it wouldn't matter one way or the other. She got the information she needed, bombed the timeline.
Right. Um, yeah, there's been a lot of people that have looked at what the timeline means, what events are, and all that kind of stuff. And there's no real reason, rhyme or reason right now that anyone can kind of see what's going on. So this is going to be interesting to see if she just did it for random purposes. The main going theory, obviously, right now is she did it for a distraction to get into the TVA, but we need to confirm where she's going with Loki in that portal particularly
Yeah.
because that's what
I
we've
think
got to
we
find
talked
out.
about it. I think we talked
Mhm.
about it in the first episode that it's
Yeah.
that there shouldn't be one sacred timeline and that
Yes.
her, even if she's doing it for selfish reasons, she's trying to make the world the way it should be, which
Mhm.
is a bunch of different paths for people,
Yeah.
and get rid of the concept of the TVA.
Yeah.
I think that's what she's doing,
Mhm.
because she specifically said, "I don't care about the TVA. Like, I don't want to rule it."
Mhm.
And she's already done the damage she needs to do in terms of creating all these timelines. So
Mhm.
we'll see what that is. But it was enough to get Renslayer from behind her desk, pick up a wand, and actually like go to fight as well. So it
Mhm.
is a big deal. It's we started the episode with being like, huh, maybe they're not as in control as we thought, and then
Mhm.
end the episode with like, oh nope, they're not. Like they
Mhm.
definitely are not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the episode. So we can talk about the other stuff for a bit now.
Yeah. So I think the Sylvie credit in the Spanish subtitles is very very interesting because obviously this is well I mean there's stuff in this episode that you talk about yourself that brings into question whether or not this actually is Loki. You know, we're not saying it is evidence, but there's whatever. But whether or not this is a character of Loki is interesting because, of course, Sylvie is the name of a Loki related kind of thing
Well, it's
in the
Enchantress, yeah.
comics. Yeah, Enchantress. Yeah, Enchantress and Loki are kind of related in this, so I think it's pretty interesting to
He
see where
created
that's going to go.
Enchantress in some
Mhm.
continuities.
Yeah, and very very interesting to see how that's going to play out. Because if she is Enchantress, then this is going to be pretty interesting for like Secret Wars and stuff like that if that happens.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I know that they are pushing for Secret Wars, but yeah,
Mhm.
I think it'll be interesting regardless of what they call her because her function will be the same.
Yeah.
It won't. That's why I'm not too like tied to this. It's just like it's irrelevant. The only reason I wasn't really basing it off of the title that she has in the end credits was that like everyone was like, "Oh, it's definitely Quicksilver in the Disney Plus and
Mhm.
WandaVision," and that clearly was not the case, even though it specifically says the Quicksilver from the Fox movies, which
Mhm.
it wasn't. So
Yeah, there's purposeful misdirects here, and like we're watching a
I
show
don't know if
about
it's purposeful.
tricksters.
I think that in that case, if you wanted someone who couldn't properly see to get the idea of what they're seeing,
Mm.
then yeah, that is the best way to describe it. So
Yeah.
that one I get, but it was like that was just them trying to describe visually what's happening, not give confirmation one way or the other of
Yeah.
who that was.
Fair.
This is obviously a different situation because they're just giving a straight up name,
Right.
but who knows? Because she's not listed as Sylvie in all the credits. She's listed
No,
as the
she's not.
variant.
In IMDb, currently it's listed as the variants as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see what that does well what the reveal is or anything like that. But yeah, it's something to watch out for. It's definitely seeds of doubt planted whether or not this is a true Loki variant or
Something
operating
else.
under
Yeah,
the
well, a different
disguise
variant.
of Loki for sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, I already
Mhm.
pushed back, being like, why would that make sense? I
Yeah,
think it makes sense if it's just a Loki variant. Like,
I agree.
don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like, oh, they're messing with it. It's just they're also planting seeds for other stuff, which I know has happened in the past, and
Mhm.
we all run with it. I think it makes the most sense if she's just a Loki variant that uh resents the fact that they're being compared to the Loki. It's kind of like, I don't know if you watch Invincible, but there's the Mauler twins who are constantly fighting over who the original one is and who the clone is. So I
Right.
feel like that's more what's happening. Is like, hey, don't
Mhm.
call me a Loki variant. You're the Loki variant.
Right.
I'm the real thing.
Mhm.
I think that's what they're doing.
Well, I mean, yeah, if that is the case, then she's got a very, very good argument towards that title. It's like, yeah, I mean, they are hunting her.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
she's the one that's able to trick them. Like,
yeah,
she's done it. I mean, before the show even started, she's been doing
yeah,
it for years, and then we've watched a bunch of times where she can outsmart them every time.
exactly. So it's one of those things that I really enjoyed that touch where Loki was like genuinely, it seemed like it's like, hey, I'm gonna pitch this and why don't you be at my side? It's like that's a really, really it was a like a really desperate plea for help to get him out of the TVA, it seemed like more than anything else, because I'm like, dude, she doesn't need your help at all.
Mm-mm,
She's been doing
no,
completely fine. You're
it's wild that he's like, you can
it's
be my lieutenant. It's like, why would she
exactly.
be under you?
I'm like, that's a terrible pitch. I'm like, your best bet would have been like, hey,
Let me help you.
we can do this together. I can help you and all this kind of stuff, as opposed to like, you could be my lieutenant. I'm like, dude, that's why like that was never going to work out from
No,
a negotiation
but
standpoint. He needed to know where he was, and he was still tricked. He was still like, I guess I don't know if he actually is believing in his own thing. Like, this is how I'm gonna trick the Time Lords and everything like that.
yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
if he actually thinks it's gonna happen.
he had to say what he said, but
Yeah.
because she already said, "Oh, that was cowardly for you to work with the TVA," so I don't
Yep.
think him being like, I just think it's good writing. It's like
Yep.
he's in a corner there because if he says, "Oh no, like we can work together," she'd be like, "Why would I work with someone who's so weak that they ended up working for the TVA?" Like, no,
Yeah.
I don't. So he needed to make it be like, "No, no, this is all part of my grand scheme." But
Yeah.
we also know that that variant is going to be like, "You're an idiot." Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't need you.
I wish he actually like offered information instead of anything else, to be like, see, you can actually try to trust me, and like she leaves him there and like builds
Again,
that thing over the
I
whole
don't know what
thing.
information he could offer her. She clearly is 10
Right.
steps ahead of them.
I know, it's just like, I'm just thinking of all the other things that he could have done, but like really nothing he could have done would have actually been a good pitch
No,
towards like joining her forces, because she just doesn't need his help at all.
and it's what he says he does, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's the weak person in that situation. He knows he is, so he's projecting
Yep.
something else. I mean,
True.
I can't say it enough. It's really good writing that is a consistency there.
Mhm.
It seems like it isn't, but it's like he already said that's his move. He
Yep.
recognized he was in a bad spot and he tried, and it
Yep.
didn't work. Like, he tried to be like, no, I'm better than that.
Yep.
I'm like, watch me. Like, oh, I'm ruthless. I'll double cross these people and I'll take over the timekeepers. And she's like,
It's like, are you? It's a lot of talk.
that
Just
is
a lot
of
of
no.
talk. Yeah.
I mean, and it's of no interest to her.
Yeah.
She, like, as you can see, like, she already had her plan planned out.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be there for her to do it. It's just
Yeah.
more like, oh yeah, you found me, great. Now all I need to do is stall until these things go off, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
So I really like that, and I like that.
Mhm.
So far, I haven't found any like, oh wow, they should have done it this way. Like, it
Yeah.
seems like all of this is the way it would have to play out
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on the characters they've created.
True. One small little detail I really liked on this is how the idea of like being possessed is really not fun in the MCU. Like how the Scarlet Witch did it in WandaVision, and how they're
Mhm.
doing it here, where like whether this be a Lady Loki or Enchantress, the fact that her touch is able to control their bodies and all that kind of stuff after they wake up. And even like, who was that guard that she took it? She took
C20.
C20. Like, she is not okay. Like in her mind and all that kind of stuff. Like it's crazy to see how traumatizing
it off much
is.
quicker.
Yes, she did, for sure.
I mean, that's probably because she was possessed for way less time.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, possibly. But I find
maybe
it very
not way
interesting.
less time. It's more just she was abducted, so maybe we were seeing like the effects of being abducted if you're a TVA
and tortured, probably to get information.
They don't operate that way. Like they think they're so outside of things that like how could they ever be abducted? So I think you're right. Yes, being taken over isn't like something you can just walk away from. You drop to the ground after a while.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think what
we saw
involved.
was more this shock of someone who's never had to deal with anything, like who has always been on top, being like, holy, like it's what Loki went through. Like, even though he kind of already knew he was never on top, this is someone who actually believed they were on top, being like, oh, I just encountered something that's better than me. Yeah,
and she lost control. She lost power, and she's so used to being in power. And I like that touch. That was such a great kind of thing. That moment of her like waking up and truly like acting wise, that was a great touch.
Yeah.
There's so many complexities in that one situation. That was the first time you're right that her world was probably flipped upside down, and she was like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, because it does seem like there's a time limit on how long she can control you for. Otherwise she wouldn't cycle through so many people. But yeah, I think you're right that it's not something that you can just be like, yeah, whatever, that happened. It's
traumatizing.
As Darcy said in WandaVision, and as we can kind of see. But I think the added trauma and why I feel like B-15 was able to shake it off a bit more was because it was kind of like she didn't get captured. She was taken over, but she was able to like get back at it. Whereas C20 was captured and feels that loss of herself. Like she probably feels less of herself, and she knows she'd lost that power in that moment.
Yeah, my assumption is she's been tortured for the information, so that added layer of psychological.
Or when she was in her mind, it was already like she just took it.
Yeah,
she wouldn't even have to be tortured. If you're already in someone's mind, you probably just know their thoughts. But let's keep our talking for next episode. There's going to be more of them.
I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm happy that you enjoyed this episode. I saw some people say it was a snore fest, and I think they're crazy.
Really?
I shouldn't say
I
that.
think they're crazy.
No, I shouldn't say that's not a nice thing to say. I don't agree with them, and I wish they wouldn't say things like that.
I want to know from their perspective how this episode could have moved faster, because to me this episode moved so fast and was so good from the first episode too. And like, granted, like things like WandaVision took a lot longer to get going anywhere, right? If the people are being like, oh, it was a snore fest this episode, I'm like, really?
Well, my assumption is none of these shows are snore fest. I think all of them are really well done, but people want more action than they want character development. But
okay,
what I would say is, if you would like to say that I'm wrong, please go to our Twitter at TDF Spoiled. You can email us spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. And we're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, which means we're part of a network that has great shows like Bad Guy Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, and more. So please head to thatshelf.com. You can find us and those shows and more. And if you would like to hear older episodes from us, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. I knew I'd get that right. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, a bunch of places. So please rate, review, subscribe, and share it with your friends, families, foes, anyone that you know. Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
That's all I got. All right.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.